And everybody was like getting on a label at the time, and it seemed like important. But we couldn't pull that off for whatever reason.
Welcome, everyone, to This Was The Scene, the podcast that takes a look back at the late 90s, early 2000 punk scene. I am your host, Mike Doyle. Dawson High were a punk band from Latrobe, Pennsylvania. Their members were Joshua, Jeff, Robbie, and Timmy. In doing this write-up, I had asked Mr. Kish, Jeff, what their sound was, and he said, well, what do you consider Weston or Digger? Pennsylvania punk? And I said, that works. So, Pennsylvania punk was their sound. If you've been following the podcast, you'll know that Jeff is the dude that I mistook Mr. Jesse Short for in his interview, which was episode 76. You can hear that story in the beginning of both of these interviews, this one and the one with Jesse, which is pretty funny. You'll most likely remember Dawson High from their split with Juliana Theory, who incidentally have a new song out. Well, not Dawson High, Juliana Theory has the song out. And they have a brand new music video by Jesse Korman of the number 12 Looks Like You, which I interviewed Jesse in episode 106, so I'm just going to keep dropping all these episodes so people go back and listen to this shit. The song and the music video are awesome, so you should definitely go check those out. Now, there's a part in the middle of the interview where it jumps from Jeff talking about the reunion show to then Weston breaking up, and you'll hear me break in and explain what happened, so just be prepared for that. So luckily I got Jeff on the Skype, and this is what we talked about. The awesomeness of Dave Weston, the scene in the Pittsburgh area, following Brian Granik to Barker's party, playing in Digger, playing in Weston, New Bedford Fest, the split with Juliana Theory, their reunion show in 2007, Weston breaking up, Cordova, the scene in Brooklyn in the late 2000s, putting on the infamous At the Drive-In / Knapsack show that you can see on YouTube. So have you ever seen this show where they're in a school? We talk about that, and it's fucking awesome. And a ton more. Couple things. Jeff works for a Universal Music Group, so you should go check out the bands that they put out. And I think that it's every first Friday, but definitely today, Bandcamp is waiving their fees, so you should go buy as much artist stuff on there as possible to support the band, since none of them can fucking tour or play any live shows anywhere. You just go to Bandcamp and just start buying shit, or I also have a link in the show notes or on the landing page. So click that and go spend money. Lastly, 3 ways to support the podcast. 1, you can go to patreon.com/thiswasthescene. You can sign up for $1 a month, which is $12 for an entire year, $120 total for 10 years if I keep doing this for that long. 2, you could donate one time on thiswasthescene.com. It's a purple button on the very top of the website. You can do whatever you want. You can do $1, $5, $10 billion if PayPal allows that, or Venmo. 3, you could buy merch at thiswasthescene.com. Just go to the merch store there, and that's it. And I will stop boring you now. Feel free to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with anyone who would love some punk rock nostalgia. With that said, let's get started. Cool, man. So now I can start this off by saying, hey, you're the person that I saw last time I saw you was at that fucking party in Pittsburgh. And I'm not going to feel like an asshole.
That's correct. You have the right person this time.
I love that when Jesse's like, I think you're mistaking me for Jeff Kish. And I'm like, I think you're absolutely right.
That was funny.
Yeah. That was really funny. I mean, I think that was the last time that we saw each other, I believe.
I think so. I was trying to think about that show the other day. I don't remember where it was. It was like at Elks Lodge or something, like a little outside of Pittsburgh. It wasn't like proper downtown or Oakland College area, if I remember.
It was the show with the Ataris though, right? And the gadgets?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Sure. I remember you didn't play though. You were just there because you lived there, right?
Right. I just went to the show to see you guys.
That was because I was like, I know we didn't play with Weston because that's when you were in Weston at that time, right?
I think, I think that was definitely around the time I was playing with Weston for sure. It's really hard because a lot of the years really blend together around that time. But I'm pretty sure that was Weston because I think you guys released the second Lane Meyer album around that time.
Yeah, and the reason that night is so vivid to me, and I've talked about this, is that on their way home, that's when Chris quit. So
Right.
we left your apartment or your friend's apartment at like midnight and started driving. And we around 6 a.m. he wakes up and he's like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I was ready to lose my mind at that point because I drove six. I was like, I think that was the only time too in my existence in that band that I drove overnight ever. So that's another reason why I remember that so much.
Overnight drives are they're the worst.
Yeah, they fucking sucked. The rule was you always made sure that your passenger was gonna be awake the whole time. That was like the
Oh
gig.
yeah,
Yeah.
I wasn't even a good co-pilot. I was an excellent bench seat person against the wall, so I could lean. I was really good at that. Co-pilot, not very good. Driver, I would do anything possible on tour to not drive.
I didn't mind driving if it was in the morning and we were doing a long drive. We get up and then just head out the door and start, because those drives would always be like 5 to 10 fucking hours to get somewhere. But that I didn't mind. I was not an overnight guy. I could not do that. That's not my fucking jam.
Yeah, I hear you, dude. Totally.
What the fuck have you been up to since I don't know. You don't have to go the full 20 years, but
Mm, so I moved to Brooklyn in 2001, and I have been here ever since. So I think Weston ended, at least the Weston that I was involved with, that ended around, I think it had to be 2000 or possibly very, very early 2001. From there, I moved to Asheville, North Carolina, because my brother was living there
huh.
and I needed some place to go to like come up with the next plan.
Yeah.
And from there, it was Brooklyn, and I've been in Brooklyn since then.
I love Asheville. It's about 3 hours from me, and I'm in Raleigh, so it's
All right, yeah.
yeah. I went there one time. I was dating a girl, and we went out there when we were going to go see the eclipse because her grandmother lived in by Greenville, which is the line of totality. So we made a stop in Asheville. That town is fucking dope.
It's cool. It's like Berkeley in the mountains or something.
Yeah,
Like super liberal and like just cool.
yeah. That was cool. And then with Brooklyn, have you played any music since then? Have you played in bands?
So when I moved to Brooklyn, Dave Weston was living here and was in the process of like trying to do like a solo thing. So I played music with Dave. Some kids from Jersey actually backed us up. Now I can't remember the name. The guy's name is Neil.
Sabatino?
Fairlane, yeah, that guy.
Yeah.
What was
Oh,
his band?
yeah. He was in Fairmont. And he used to do.
Fairmont.
Yeah, he used to book shows at the Palace, and he was in Pensy Prep. And Pensy Prep was with Frank from My Chem.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
Very cool.
that's so random because he literally just messaged me today to get a couple sponsorship spots. That's so funny. So he played with you guys. He might have mentioned that in his, but his episode was 68, so that was a while ago. Um,
Oh wow.
I remember
So
more from like the 20 years ago than fucking 10 episodes ago of people I interviewed. I'm sitting there like, I was like, I know, because I'll try to like pick from those interviews in these interviews and be like, yeah, they said this thing, but I can't remember. And it's like, that was like 3 months ago. Like, I can't even fucking remember it.
well, it's funny because Dave, we were writing some songs together, I think, and I'm pretty sure we played one show. Like, I don't remember if it was just me and Dave acoustic or me and Dave with electric guitars, but we played at a bar, and maybe this is when the bar Siberia was in Hell's Kitchen, I think, and we played there under the name Babar, like the
But the elephant?
children's book.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. And then I don't know, like we hit a wall or like we're like maybe this isn't like what we should be doing. But then Dave basically worked on a solo album and then was like, you should play guitar with me. And we rounded out the lineup with the Fairmont guys. So it was a drummer and Neil played bass and I played guitar and Dave played guitar and sang. So we played some shows as that lineup. I remember playing For sure, we played at Maxwell's because there's like a soundboard recording of it. Then we definitely played in Pennsylvania and in Allentown. And I remember the weird thing about the Allentown show was I had to use Jimmy's guitar,
Yep.
Smiling Jim James,
Yeah.
and I had never played his Les Paul before. And I remember playing it for that show, and I was like, I cannot stand this guitar. Like, it is like literally cutting the circulation off in my shoulder because it was so heavy.
So fucking heavy. Yeah.
It was ridiculous. But I also, the other thing I remember about that show, it was like Dave's kind of homecoming back in Allentown, and he did an interview with the Morning Call, like the local newspaper there.
Yeah.
And it was so ridiculous because when they asked who would be backing him up, he said that that he got the guitar player from Danzig, and it was me. And no one ever like checked it. They just printed it. So like it was so funny to get that newspaper like the day before the show and be like, oh, there it is. I'm from Danzig. So that was like, just like classic Dave, just very quick and sharp. And it was always delivered in the way that no one knew if it was like true or false. It didn't matter. But that was super fun.
This is funny because, and the only reason I can say this right now is because people listening, they'll have heard this interview, but Angelo from Grieving Eucalyptus is going to be the interview before yours. I just talked to him yesterday.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and there was a part where I'm talking to him and I said, there's this like certain personality that different cities and states had with people. Like you knew when you showed up, you can kind of guess where you were. But like you showed up blindfolded, you'd start talking to the kids or the bands. You're like, okay, I know I'm here. And I was saying that the Eastern Pennsylvania crowd, like you guys, like just all the bands from there that we were friends with that I know, you guys have such a quirky, like funny attitude or like personality. And he was like,
Sure.
Yeah, you're kind of right." So by you saying that about Dave, I was like, well, Dave is just funny in general, but you guys are always just like really fucking funny people. And I feel like that was something in the water in that area where you guys all just kind of had that.
Well, just like getting off topic a little bit, this is like the first time I met Dave Weston. This is so funny. I still think about this. But
Can't wait.
so Weston played at IUP, Indiana University of Pennsylvania, which was probably like a 45-minute to an hour drive from my parents' house. And they played in the basement of the teen center. And this is pre Got Beat Up, but I was a big fan because I had always loved Real Life Story. I thought that it was just amazing because it was pretty different from everything that was going on, but like had something that was it was just really drew me in. But I remember going to that show and sitting on the curb outside, and Dave was sitting out there, and I'd never met him before. And we were just chatting, and he's like, have you heard of this band called the Swamp Men? And I was like, no, I haven't. And he was like, oh my God. He's like, if you like the Misfits, you would love this band. They're like doing stuff that's like so amazing, and it's just like really great and fresh, and and kept going on, and like really, really like sold me on this band. And I was like, oh my God, where's this band from? Like, I have to know more about them. And he's like, oh, they're from Mind, Pennsylvania. And I was like, they're right here in Pennsylvania. And he's like, yeah, they're from Mind. And I was like, oh my God, where's Mind, Pennsylvania? Like, I'm from Pennsylvania, and I've never heard of Mind. And he just stopped talking and pointed at his head. Like, he just made the whole thing up and sold me on a fictitious band. And it was just like one of the craziest things ever, but like was like completely funny.
Did you
Because I was like,
did you find the joke in
younger.
that? Did you find were you like,
It took me a
fuck you,
couple
man?
minutes, but
Yeah.
like then I was like, oh yeah, okay, right, they're in your head. I got it. But it was definitely a weird, funny thing. That was like kind of the beginning of my friendship with Dave. that, like kind of like distant friendship at first, like you'd see each other at shows or our bands would play together. But like, I don't know, Dave has always like been one of the coolest people I've ever met, and like so lucky like to have met Dave Weston and been like pals with him and to still be pals with him. Like super funny, but like I just really thought his sense of humor was like you could have the worst day on tour and Dave would just say something and you would immediately be like, oh yeah, it's perfect. It's going to be great.
Did he ever?
But oh yeah.
No, did he
Oh, go
ever
ahead.
like?
Sorry.
No, just so I think I know I always structure this by starting off. I've asked for 100 something episodes where I'm like talk about what got you into music and then let the scene. I think I'm gonna start weeding out that whole like got you into music thing because I like where this is at right now and I want to talk about how you got in the scene stuff. But on tour, because I want to talk about Dawson High and I want to talk about Weston a little bit. But when because you were the last iteration of the band, you were in that last bit where it was you, Dave, Jimmy, Jesse, and then
Jeremiah
Jeremiah, yep,
and
and someone on keyboard.
Jason Adams. Yeah, 88 keys, Jason Adams.
Okay, yeah, that's when Weston the sound got way different from what it originally was. It kind of like progressed from Got Beat Up, Matinee, and then that's when Mojo Records came in and just started going off in this direction. So you were at the end of it, but like
Yeah.
during that, did you ever actually see Dave like stress out? Or was he always just Dave?
No, Dave is just Dave. It's like that's just Dave. I don't know if he like I can't speak to how it is inside his head if it's like a never let him see you sweat kind of mentality, but like Dave is just Dave from my perspective.
I kind of figured that. Like, did you see any of the Quarantunes when he played?
Um is that like the Facebook Live thing?
Yeah, with Vix does it. He's done like 7
Oh
shows.
yeah. He had like a backdrop and everything.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
like the spaceship and all that, or whatever he did.
It was amazing. I mean, like he just always delivers.
Yeah, he always just shows up, and it's just like talking to Chuck. It was funny listening about the two of them to just do whatever they could just to make each other laugh, and that was it. And then when he got serious, that's when Chuck bounced, and then later on, and I think then Dave just kind of stuck with it. But yeah. So let me talk about. So I want to talk about like how you actually got involved in the Pennsylvania scene because it's like I've talked to a bunch of bands from that are like Chris from Digger and then Jesse, Chuck, Josh from Overdrives. Now Angelo from Grieving Eucalyptus. So I got this really cool picture that's being painted about that time. I want to get like kind of like your perspective. So like, how did you like stumble upon that scene?
So it's kind of weird for me because I am from like 4.5 hours away from those guys. So like I grew up on the other side of the state. So like my scene was more Pittsburgh and more specifically kind of like in the burbs of Pittsburgh in a town called Latrobe and Greensburg. I had a friend, my friend Todd, who played drums. He was a catcher on the little league team I was on. I was on his team. He was a year older. He was kind of like into punk rock and was always like, "You should play guitar. You should play guitar. Get a guitar." And I was just like, I like playing baseball. I mean, also I'm 11. Like I was just like, I like playing little league right now. Like it's cool, blah blah blah. And I think maybe when I turned 12, so there was this dude, Eric Pfeiffer, and I completely lost track of this guy. But my bus stop was at the end of my street. It was my first year in a new school, and Eric Pfeiffer was in that school. And I was 12, and we were in the same grade, and I'm going to guess he was like 15. Like, so he obviously got held back a lot. But he had a jean jacket, and on the back of the jean jacket was the Misfits Crimson Ghost logo. And I just remember seeing that and being like, tapping this older kid like on the shoulder and being like, "Hey, what is that thing on your jacket?" You know?
Wow.
And he's all like, "Oh, it's this band, the Misfits. Like, do you like punk rock?" And I was like, "I don't know what punk rock is." And he was like, "I'll make you a mixtape." So like maybe like 2 days later at the bus stop, like as I showed up, he like put this cassette in my hand, and it was like, like that was like in the 80s, like 89, I would guess. And so like when you made a mixtape for someone, even like early 90s, like a lot of thought went into it.
Oh
And like,
yeah.
I don't know how you did, but like I would write liner notes. And the reason I wrote liner notes is because that's what Eric Pfeiffer did. He wrote like these liner notes. It was like, the first band on side A is The Clash. You might like them because of this, and this is like what they stand for. And then here's a
Wow.
band called 999. And I remember like I couldn't wait to get home from school that day. And I basically just like locked myself in my bedroom and put that on like my little like boom box and just listened to that tape, like flipping it over and just kept going. And I was like, this is amazing.
Real quick though, with that, like, did you really catch on? Like, did the music really catch you because you like honestly liked it, or did you like force yourself to like it because this cool dude made you a tape and you're like, I don't know what this is, but I want to like it, but it's not as easy as all these 80s bands I'm listening to.
The one song that really grabbed me, and it was the second song on side A, was Sex Pistols' Bodies.
Okay.
And I was hooked from the part where Johnny Rotten's like, fuck this and fuck that and fuck it, blah, blah, blah. And he swore. And I was like, holy shit, this is like, now this is dangerous.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm in. Like, like when people are like, what are you doing in that bedroom? Be like, nothing. Don't worry about it. Like, turn the music down for a second, then you hear the footsteps, and then turn the music, walk away and put the music back up. And I thought the guitars sounded cool, and it was like a little bit aggressive. And like then the Ramones were on that tape, and like that's when it was like, wait, this is kind of like the Beach Boys, but like faster and louder, and like makes you like want to jump around. And it just really grabbed me. And I'd say probably like maybe like 2 months after that, I had my parents, like I convinced them to get me a guitar.
Which band made you want to play guitar?
Probably the Sex Pistols more than anyone else. Then I'd say like the Ramones. I really love the Clash, but like it felt like it was one step beyond something I could do. It was a little more advanced. And then, as you become a guitar player, you're like, well, it wasn't that much more advanced. But when you're 12 and you don't know anything about anything, it seems like it was light years ahead, that they were doing like sort of like reggae kind of ska, like upstroke kind of thing, where I was like, I can barely make my hand go down.
It's so crazy, man. It's like just seeing, it's like for me being in marketing for so many years, you really can't deny just branding, right? And something, if you do it right, it catches the attention of the people it's supposed to catch the attention of. So like the Misfits logo, you seeing that was just, what is that? And it just brought you into your life now.
Yeah,
Like
that
that one
that thing
question.
that a guy drew on a pillowcase and safety pinned to the back of his jean jacket changed my life.
It's wild. It's so
It's
fucking
so
crazy.
weird.
That's so fucking crazy. So like, d-
But
yeah, yeah. Sorry, go on.
oh, I was just gonna say, so like from there, like when I would see Todd, I would be like, hey man, I got a guitar. Like we should, do something. And like he would set his drums up in my bedroom, like where my bed is. And like it wasn't very big. Like you'd have to like kind of shuffle furniture around to get it like set up. And my parents could only take us playing for like, if practice was 45 minutes, that was a long one. Usually it was like 25, and my dad would just be like, it wasn't that they weren't into it, but we just sounded so horrible.
Oh yeah.
And they would just be like, we've been in the living room, like, we can't hear this for another minute. Like, the guitar's not in tune. You're not playing the same thing. Like, it just sounds like a train wreck. But that was kind of like my first, like, kind of like intro to like being like, we should start a band. And that band actually had a name, and it was called Giant Robot. I do have some like boombox recordings of it. Every time I visit my parents, I try to like organize my boxes of stuff. I come across it, and I did listen to Giant Robot like a year ago, and it actually was worse than I remember. Like we were that bad. I was like, well, it's probably bad, but like it couldn't have been that bad. And then when I listened back, it was really terrible. Like I just didn't have like Todd obviously was a drummer, and back then like as I'm sure you can attest, being in like bands a lot, like the drummers never really contributed very much other than just drums.
Yeah.
That was kind of like the drummer thing back then. Like they weren't like coming in with songs on guitar and being like, here you go. So
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
it was up to me to be creative, and like they were just really dumb songs like about balloons or like like baseball cards and spokes of your bike or something. Like I just didn't have any like thing to like really like complain about, or like there wasn't enough life experience to draw on to like create something clever yet.
Yeah. I mean, you're what?
But like
11 years old? 13 years old?
maybe like 12 by the time like we actually really started jamming. So that was kind of like got me into music. But like we used to have shows in the town where I grew up, Latrobe. It's really weird because it's only like 20,000 people, but there was like a pretty good like punk rock alternative scene there. We had like a dedicated venue called Harry's Danceland, and like Rollins band played there, No Effects played there. This is all before my time, like
Yeah.
mid 80s. But like we always had this club that we could get a show in. Touring bands would come through. There was always shows at like a teen center or like a fire hall or an Eagles, Legion, all that stuff. And so Todd there was a show in Derry Community Center, which is like the town next to Latrobe. My mom dropped me off over there at this show at like 7 p.m. Todd's mom was going to like come pick us up, but Todd had already got there. And I remember like going in, and Todd was standing there and his shirt was like ripped apart, and not like ripped apart like fashionably, like got into a fight, like ripped apart.
Okay.
And I remember being like, dude, what's wrong with your shirt? Like, you obviously didn't come here like dressed like that. And he was like, no, there's these like skinheads that came into the show and like ripped my shirt off and blah blah blah. I remember like going into the show, and like he was a little bigger than me. I was super tiny 12-year-old kid. And I remember him being like, you should stay like behind me and off to the side. I remember like people like having like a pit or whatever you want to call it, and then also being like, like a little kid being like, again, like the danger element came back in, and you don't think right, like you blow it out of proportion. But I remember being like, well, there's a good possibility like I could be killed here tonight, and I'm gonna have to be on guard, and this is what this is about, and blah blah blah. And I was like, I'm in. Like I love it. It's so cool. Like it was the danger element where I was just like, this is cool. And like the music in our scene was pretty heavy. It was like maybe like an amphetamine reptile kind of vibe, like early Helmet, or like really noisy like Tad, stuff like that. And it like attracted like people that were like really into like being super aggressive, and it kind of was super cool and scary, but like it also kind of made me rethink like the how we were trying to do Giant Robot. I was like, this is never going to fly at this place. Like these people aren't going to be into this.
It's funny you mentioned that because Angelo in his interview, he talks in length about how scary the scene was with skinheads, and then later on it kind of dissipated. So that sounds like that was bleeding all the way out to where you were.
It really was. I mean, like I didn't go to shows in Allentown back then, but like knowing all those people out there from having played music with like bands from that area, like when they tell the stories, that like it sounds like the struggle was real, like that was like a real problem. And I know that it certainly was like out our way as well. I don't know about Pittsburgh proper because at that time my parents weren't, they weren't having me go to the city, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But like we had enough going on in our weird little town that you didn't really have to. The city was coming out there to play. Like an old Pittsburgh punk band, Half Life, those guys would come and play at Danceland. We had a hardcore band called Direct Action. They always played there. And Direct Action, we had a band called Rugburn, who was really great. there was like 10 feet tall, 10 feet tall ended, split into Davenport. And there was just like there was a lot of bands for like a small area. And it was cool. Like there was enough that it was hard to keep up with, and I think that's like what made it super fresh.
I had no idea there
Because
was such
like
a
something was,
Pittsburgh. Sorry, go on.
it's really weird.
Yeah.
It's really weird to explain about that area because like it doesn't really make sense why it was like that, but it was cool.
Well, I
Like
mean, it
there was
does.
a
No,
show.
it does because I mean, you guys are in. I mean, Pennsylvania's a big ass state, and then once you start getting more into the western part, you're getting away from Philadelphia, New Jersey, the city. It just becomes a lot of land, a lot of farmland, and it almost like anything you could fucking do to kill time was you'd figure it out. But then if you were doing that and you're going to a show, I mean, I know what it was like, the excitement of going to a show, and I had shit around me to do. Like it sounds, I mean, sure, like Pittsburgh was a city and stuff, but it does make sense that when kids are like, we got to make our own thing, and this music thing is cool. Uh, let's, let's fucking do this shit on our own.
Yeah, 100%. It was like all about music, skateboarding, like that sort of, what do they call it? Like counterculture life
Yeah.
back then. And it was cool. And it was like completely like consumed me. Like after like a year, I was done with baseball. Like I think I played baseball another year and I got hit by a pitch and broke my arm. So I missed the season. And then like I had to build an excuse to never play again because my parents would be like, well, it's coming up. And I'd be like, yeah, but I'm a year behind. Like it's not possible to catch up. And they'd be like, oh yeah, I guess he has a point. And then I would just play music.
Awesome.
So like it worked. And it didn't make me look like a quitter.
But you were you're playing shows at the age of 12 and 13?
No, I think like first show was probably 14.
Wow.
We were playing
Still.
music and going to shows.
But still, like just being 14 and showing up and playing a show. I remember like the little kid bands that would show up and we're like, oh, this is so cool. But I mean, just to start then, because I was 17, so I was able to drive there, and like you're getting dropped off by your parents and shit with your stuff.
Yeah. So I mean, like, well, that kind of like dovetails into like the first band that I really played a show in. Like Giant Robot played a show in Todd's garage in an alley with like maybe like 8 people or 10 people or something. So that didn't really count. But like after that, Todd got asked to play drums for this dude, Fred Smith, who was like kind of like a long-haired like metal guy. I tried to play guitar in that and it didn't work. Like I just wasn't good enough. And like Fred was like a traditional like Sabbath, Hendrix, or like more proper like more recent metal at that time. And I couldn't keep up with that. Todd was like, "Well, keep practicing and when you're like better, you can join this band or maybe we'll do something different." And I started a band called To Kill a Mockingbird with this guy Adam and this guy Chad, and they were both 3 years older than me. And so that removed my parents from the equation because they drove. That like it opened up like the possibility because I wasn't like depending on a ride anymore from my parents. And so
How good a guitar were you getting at this point? Like confident wise, I
mm,
guess.
okay, I was pretty confident, but maybe I still wasn't very good. But like I think sometimes if you're confident and I was good at what I could do,
Yeah.
but like I was confident, so it translated into like what I was doing didn't feel like I was uncertain. It felt like I was certain. So like I kind of think I was always kind of lucky because people would be like, "Oh, he's a great guitar player." And I would think to myself, "Oh, I'm terrible." I would also be like, I need to like agree with them. Be like, "Yeah, I've been practicing a lot. I work real hard." And it the more it consumed me, the more I practiced. But To Kill a Mockingbird wasn't really set up around me as a guitar player. It was more set up around Adam, who played bass and was into like effects pedals. And it certainly had like a slower Discord kind of feel to what we did, but like
Okay.
maybe a bit of early Jawbox, but the guitar wasn't really the focus. The guitar was more of like a texture, and the bass was almost kind of like a lead thing. But I did have to sing, and I was terrible, terrible singer in that. Like I can listen to the tapes and it's kind of makes me cringe a little, but like at the same time, I kind of like pat myself on the back a little bit because like no one
Yeah.
else would sing and they were just like, you have to. And I was like, okay, I will. I have no idea what I'm doing.
That's how
So
you, I mean, that's how
I
you
just
get there.
did it.
Yeah. I mean, even if you just have an inkling of wanting to, and you're like, I can kind of maybe
Yeah,
hold a melody, and I'll like, if I really want to do this, it'll show up eventually if I just keep doing this.
exactly. Yeah, so it was like that. And then that band went on for a little while, and then it kind of just, I don't remember, I don't recall like us breaking up, but like we just, it's like one of those things where just like we're like, do we practice Saturday? And someone was like, no, and then no one ever scheduled another practice.
That
But
sounds
that
about
was like
right.
my first real show, like in that band. And then after that, I reconvened with Todd, and that's when we started sort of like a Ramonesy pop punk band called Campfire Girls. And that was like my first band that got on like a CD comp or an LP comp. Played, shows like out of state. And we're like, oh, someone would be like, oh, I have a friend in Ohio. And that's when we're like, we can't play Ohio. And then we're like, wait, we can play Ohio. Let's just drive to Ohio next Friday and play a show. And, you started like branching out more. It would be like, okay, we'll play Eastern PA, we'll play Maryland, we'll play West Virginia, which, believe it or not, actually had a really cool scene back then, and Ohio and Erie and maybe Buffalo, and just kind of like spiderwebbed out. And that band lasted, I don't know, maybe like 2 years or 3 years or something, probably three. Our bass player started this record label called Just Add Water Records and put out records by like the Pink Lincolns, the Queers,
Oh
like
wow.
like 7-inch singles and stuff. So it was pretty cool. And then he moved to California, and we got a new bass player, and that lasted for maybe like 6 more months. And then it was just kind of over. But I did make some good friends with that band from Jersey, a group called the Halflings. Do you know them?
Halflings. I think I've
They were
seen
like
it
outside of
somewhere.
Philly, Jersey,
Okay.
but like they were pretty cool. It was these guys, George, Matt, and Don. Matt and Don were brothers. The Matt and Don Yonkers. Matt ended up playing in Screeching Weasel and Teen Idols
Oh
and the
wow.
Queers.
Okay. So
And I think he does like live sound now or something, or engineering in Tennessee, maybe. But I lost touch with those guys. But they were really cool. And I think around that time, also, like I would sell merch. Oh, right. So our bass player who moved to California to join this band called the Parasites. And so when the Parasites came around the East Coast, I would like go, I would either take a bus somewhere not too far away and then just pal around with them for a week selling t-shirts while they toured. And that kind of like informed me more that like, okay, like we could go further than like just states that touch ours. Like we should be looking to go down to like North Carolina or South Carolina, Atlanta, and all that stuff. And it just like planted the seed. But then, like I said, we had a new bass player, and it just kind of like fizzled out. Like it wasn't as appealing as much for some reason. I don't remember why. Around that time, so I'm bandless and maybe a year out of high school, and I was skateboarding at the stadium in Latrobe where the high school plays football and occasionally the soccer team plays there. Josh Kosker, whom I'm not sure if you know,
I don't think so.
but he was playing soccer there and was considerably. He was 4 years younger than me. Back then, you would say like he's considerably younger, but now when I see him, he's not considerably younger. We're just old people now. But he was forever like pestering me to play music with him. He was a big Campfire Girls fan. He had a sort of pop punk band called Noisome that was with Josh Fiedler, whom he would later be in a band in Juliana Theory with.
Okay.
But so Josh Kosker would pester me forever to please play music, please play music. And I remember skateboarding outside the stadium, and he finished his game and came out, and he saw me, and I was like, I should try to get out of here. And he got to me too quick and was like, I'll only ask you one more time because I can tell you're annoyed, but would you play music with me? And I was like, okay, I'll play with you. Fine. Like, how do you want to do this? And he's like, well, I get out of high school at 2:37 on weekdays, so maybe blah, blah, blah. We could meet someday at like 3, and I'll have to do homework at 5, so we only have like 2 hours. And I played music with him. It was amazing. Like I couldn't believe it, and that is how Dawson High started.
Okay, and then in Dawson High, because there's like I'm trying to find anything about you guys online, and I even have your name and Discogs, and it comes up with I Want a Second Chance, and it's got the Juliana split with Dawson High, which I want to talk about. There's like, but do you guys even have your music anywhere online, like SoundCloud or something?
You can buy the like sort of anthology or whatever you want to call it. You can buy that on iTunes. Um,
Oh,
it's up there. I I can't remember what it's called, but it's up there. The cover is blue, I think, with DH. Then they look like high school lettering kind of thing. But yeah, so
what did you do in the band though?
oh,
Like,
go ahead.
yeah, were you the singer in that band, or did you just play guitar?
I I sang some songs and played guitar, but and Josh sang and played guitar, but Josh sang more songs than me. I would say like I sang about maybe I sang like 4 songs and Josh sang like 15.
Well, we did we ever play with you guys? Because I'm trying to think of like when exactly you and I met, and I know it was before you were in Weston, and it was maybe just from partying out like with Pennsylvania bands, and we met. But I could swear we played shows with Dawson High because I remember buying. Because the thing I found online is your split. One of the splits is with the yellowish green
Yep.
cover with Juliana Theory, and I remember buying that record, that CD at a show.
I felt like we might have played with you guys at Skaters World,
Possibly. Let me look that
but
up,
I know
actually.
where I met you.
Where?
So I played a show. Um, I joined Digger, and I met you when I was in
Yes,
Digger.
that's
But
it.
Digger played with um, Lane Meyer at Mount Arlington Elks Lodge.
Really? I don't remember
So
playing.
were you always in Lane Meyer?
Yeah, me and Chris were always in the band, and I'm just trying to think because we played a bunch of shows with Digger, and that you're right, that is where we met. But I don't remember there being a show at the Mount Arlington Elks Lodge, but we did play a lot of shows there. So I'm like literally looking up
Okay,
flyers
maybe
right
you
now to
didn't play
say
that show, but after that show, there was a party at Chris Barker's house,
yes. Okay, that makes sense.
which is what's his name? Oh, Brian Granik
Yep.
led us to that party.
I
And
love this.
I remember meeting Brian Granik, and I thought like he was like a little over the top, like
Yeah. Yeah.
enthusiastic, energetic, like in your face kind of let's go, blah blah blah. And like we were following him and he was following someone else. And I remember Chris Benner was driving and like the people somehow maybe there was someone else following him too and like he lost them, Brian Granik lost them, and we pulled into a parking lot and we're like, dude, you've got to slow down. Like, you're running all these red lights and we can't, like, it's too late for us to go. Like, we're going to lose you and you've already lost your friends. And I don't even know why this happened or why I thought it was so funny, but I remember him like rolling his window down and putting his head out being like, fuck them, let's go to the mall. We'll go to the mall. And we're all like, dude, should we just drive back to Allentown? Like, what's going on with this? We're gonna go to a mall now? And like, so we like followed him to some mall.
Rockaway Mall.
And sure enough, like the people that were following us ended up going to that mall, and like we got back in our little caravan and then went to Chris Barker's.
That's so fucking funny. That makes total sense too. So Granik, I just interviewed him recently. We talked for like 3 hours. It was crazy. But Granik that is exactly what he was like back then. He was just super over the top, had a lot of energy. And I could just picture his yellow car that he used to drive with all the stickers on it. But yeah, we would go to Rockaway Mall because a bunch like him, Sean from Lane Meyer, Josh from Whole Beginnings, bunch of people that all worked at the Hot Topic at Rockaway Mall. So that was like kind of our spot in general to go to, but that was kind of our home base where we kind of go into Hot Topic and catch up with everyone working there. And so that makes sense that he went there. I'm trying to remember this party where, I mean, obviously that's going to be really hard to do, but because Chris had a few of them when his parents would go away. But that makes
It was a good party.
Yeah, there was great parties. Sometimes they got a little bit crazy-ish. I won't tell any Chris stories because he'll murder me. There's definitely a few.
Well, it's funny. I don't know. That became like our slogan for like probably like 18 months after that. Someone would be like, well, what do you think we should do? And someone would inevitably just say, fuck them, let's go to the mall. Like that was like for sure like used on like the next 3 digger tours like nonstop.
That's so fucking funny.
It was so weird. So maybe you guys didn't play the Mount Arlington show.
I don't think we did. I don't remember. There's one show where we set up not by the bar and it was in a different spot, but the Digger shows I remember were at Skaters Worlds where I first saw them play, but you weren't in it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is when they were a 3-piece. This is after like I think Phil had passed away and they were playing as a 3-piece. And we played with them out in Athens, Georgia. We were on tour with Whippersnapper. Yeah, there was a bunch of spots. But like, yeah, talk about Dawson. Like, how long were you guys together? And and how did you even put out anything besides the Juliana Theory split? Or we'll start with like, how long were you together? Let's do that.
I would say like 5 years, but in the middle there was like a year where we didn't play. And that was because Josh joined the Juliana Theory and I joined Digger at the time. So maybe 4 years. As far as everything, I think there's like some songs that were released on like comps because everyone put out a comp back then.
Oh yeah.
As far as like proper releases, there was it's the split with the Juliana Theory. And there was a cassette before that was called, I think it was called PA Pop Rock. I don't remember, but it was weird because it was sold locally and all the record stores were keeping sales of the chart, keeping track of the sales. And it was like the number one selling thing in all the record stores for like, I don't know, like 6 weeks or something.
Holy shit.
And it was really weird. Like we couldn't make these cassettes fast enough. Juliana Theory became a band shortly after Dawson High. They immediately got on Tooth and Nail. And that was because Brett was in Zayo, who was a solid state Tooth and Nail artist as well.
Oh.
And he kind of like parlayed that into Juliana Theory. And that was kind of like, we're like, okay, now we have to get on a label, like ASAP. We just couldn't get on a label for whatever reason. I have no idea why. I mean, like, I don't recall if someone spoke to someone at like Creep Records, and then there was talk about Just Add Water since Campfire Girls Connection but then that was more like a 7-inch thing. And everybody was like getting on a label at the time, and it seemed like important, but we couldn't pull that off for whatever reason. And it was weird because like we had really good shows. Like we would sell out our local shows and like sell out consistently, like where people couldn't get in, like turned away.
That's what I'm talking about. Like, I didn't even know what kind of following you guys had, but it sounded like it was it was like kind of locally massive.
It was weird, but like, and it just like didn't I don't know if we didn't get on good shows or whatever outside of town, but like it was kind of frustrating. And at that time, we played a show with Digger in Chester, like south of Philly. On the way, we were going to crash in the Lehigh Valley that night, and we followed them home from Chester. Oh my God, we played at a strip club, and it had to be a matinee show because the strippers came at like 6. So you had to be out of there. It was really weird. There might have been like 5 people, but like on the way to the Lehigh Valley, I guess the Digger guys got into a fight in their van, and Phil quit.
Oh
And
wow.
so when we got to Quakertown and everyone got out of the van and got in their separate cars, and we stayed with, I think it was Matt and Mike were still there. Phil left and Benner left. They were like, Phil quit the band. And I was like, oh man, that sucks. And they're like, we have shows next weekend, and like we have no idea like what we're gonna do. And I was like, I'll do it. I'll play. And they were like, okay. So like
Holy shit.
I think we played a show the next day, and then we drove back to Pittsburgh. And then I learned the songs like that Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday. And then drove out there on a Thursday night, had a quick practice Friday morning, and drove to Virginia Beach. And that was my first Digger show.
What year was this?
And what's that?
What year was that?
That would have probably been like 96 or 7.
Okay.
Somewhere around there. But then, so that was cool. I was like, okay, like I played like that weekend, and I thought the Digger guys were gonna be like, okay, you should just move here and join our band. And I was like, okay, well, they're on a label and they're like playing more shows than us and have like a name. Maybe this is good. And that was like, admittedly, that was like pretty lame on my part. That like, I was like, okay, I'll just quit Dawson High. But then they ended up not picking me. They wanted someone who was local. They went through a couple of people. Dana Fair was one who used to like engineer Weston. Nolan, I can't remember Nolan's last name, but he used to tour manages Alkaline Trio now. Not sure
Oh,
what he did back then.
he was playing with Honor System for a minute, I thought. And
Okay,
then
so you know Nolan.
yeah, I met Nolan a couple times, and then he went on to do guitar tech and roadieing for Alkaline Trio, but then he would be in the stage in the background. Actually, it's funny if you listen to the Laura Jane Grace book, Tranny,
Hmm.
of the singer from Against Me, she talks
Yep.
about how much she hated Nolan. It's this whole part. It's this whole part about how he like before he transitioned, he was like he had married. I don't know how to properly say all this, but when he was Tom, she was Tom. He was this is when he fell in love with Heather, and then they got married eventually. But when they were on tour with Alkaline Trio, he just butted heads consistently with Nolan, and they talks about in the book. It's really fucking funny. But yeah, I met him a couple times. I didn't know he played with Digger though. That's so weird because he
He
was up in
did.
Chicago. That's weird.
Yes. So like that, I was like bummed out about that because Dana was local, but when Dana didn't want to do it, instead of asking me, they asked Nolan. But I mean, in the background of this, like since they didn't pick me, like Dawson High kept going. But like our drummer Tim was like increasingly like resistant to like doing as many shows as we wanted to do. So like it kind of like planted a seed that like, okay, like maybe we kick him out and get a new drummer and like really go all in. And then maybe like at the end of this sort of like soul searching of Dawson High, we played a show with Digger in my town. Everyone crashed at my house that night, and they were like, "So we actually think we want you to do this now." And I was like, "Okay, I'm in." That's like I joined Digger. I moved there. I lived in Mike's parents' basement, and that was it. Like I had a car, and I lived in this guy's basement with his parents.
See, this makes so much sense to me because Dawson High, it was the way you're explaining it is exactly how I remember it. Where I remember the name, I remember getting the split, and it was, "Where's this band?" And they're like, "Oh, they broke up, but Jeff's playing in all these bands now." He's like, now I forgot you were with Digger, and that's how we met. And then ended up in Weston, but like that makes so much sense because it was just a name, and then I never saw you guys play, or don't remember seeing you guys play, even though I swear to God we must have played with you. But what year did you guys break up? Was this 96?
Probably like stopped playing in like 97, like to 98.
That's why. Okay, because Lamar started in 98, in the beginning of 98, and then we started playing shows through that year because before that we were Congress of Cal, but we didn't really leave New Jersey. We had like one show where we left, which I talk about in the Grieving Eucalyptus interview. But
Wait, did Congress of Cal play that Mount Arlington show
it might that might have been
with
it.
Digger?
It might have been it because we did play. We played a couple times at Mount Arlington where we were like really trying to figure out. We were finding our footing, and I believe there's a photo of me when we had just played with Bigwig, and I talked about the show so many fucking times when we were down in Bordentown or Heightstown, and I fell in love with Bigwig, and we ended up hanging out at this girl's house at some point at that time period, and I had dyed my hair like pink, and she like rubber band pigtails all on my head. So I'm playing the show with this shit, and it's at Mount Arlington. So we were a Congress of Cal, but I we played with Digger, like I was a huge fan back then, and I would have remembered we played with you guys, but I could be fucking wrong. I gotta check these. Yeah, that might have fucking been it. Or we were supposed to play and we didn't play.
I feel like maybe Inspector 7 or something was a band that played that show. Is that
Possibly.
is,
God, I really want to connect the dots here for this whole timeline.
I found the flyer for that show once on the New Jersey pop punk Facebook page. The
Yeah,
flyer's in there.
I'm on that right now, and I'm in 97, but I should be in 96 possibly. Because let me just look, because Digger will pop out as the name on one of the flyers. This is gonna drive me fucking crazy. Hold on, I gotta look through this.
No problem.
Fuck it, let's go to the mall.
That was like, we're like, what is this guy doing?
It sounds like Granik.
Like can still remember Benner being like, guys, do we just bail and drive back to Allentown? Like it seems weird.
You have such an interesting like timeline of how you just jumped around in bands. Like it, it's like it seems like you were just like you had your own thing, turned into Dawson High, and then you guys were doing that for 4 years. You're getting this following, and then when did the other dude go to Juliana Theory? Was that before you left Dawson High or after? Or like during you leaving?
So it was like Dawson High was just kind of like a little dormant while I was in Digger. And then like so I did Digger for a while. It just had some like weird disagreements in the band, and I was like, I don't like this band. It doesn't feel fun to me anymore. So like I don't want to do this. And so I went back home, and like I met up with like the Dawson High guys, and I was like, look, I'm not doing Digger anymore. And so these guys, rightfully they were upset with me since I left to go do Digger.
Pretty much.
And then like I came back and I was like, look, I'm not doing that anymore. Like we really need to focus on this. I think like the songs are really good. And if we put our like put our heads down and like really work, we can make something happen here. And everyone's like, okay, cool. And then in 2 weeks later, the Juliana Theory asked Josh Kosker to join, and like he immediately did. And I don't fault him for that.
Yeah.
But then I was like, fuck, like here we are again. Like, and it was interesting because then like I got to see like how it felt on the receiving end.
Interesting.
Like, and so that happened, and so like I just kind of like did whatever. Like maybe Dawson High was still playing like a show here or there when Juliana Theory was like on break in between tours or something. Then around that time, I spoke to Dave Weston, and he was like, we're thinking about auditioning people for a third guitar player, and your name came up. Like, is that something like you'd be interested in? And I was like, yeah, I totally, I want to do that. Like, that's like my favorite band ever, of course. And I don't even really remember auditioning. I remember going. So they used to rehearse in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania at the California Drum Shop. They had like a room in the back. And I remember going out there. Everyone was there. And they were just like, okay, play, like, what song do you want to play? Maybe they gave me like a cassette or something of like 5 songs to learn. And like, I would be like, play this one. And then someone was like, hey, we should play this one. And Jimmy was like, no, we can't do that one. It's not on the tape that he has. And I was like, I know it. And they're like, oh, you already know that one and it's not on there? And I was like, yeah, totally. And they're like, let's play it. And we did. And like, I don't know if they auditioned anyone else after, because like I kind of remember like maybe Dave telling me, if it wasn't immediately after the practice, maybe like an hour after, and he was like, it's yours if you want it.
Holy shit.
And I was like, yeah, totally, I'm in.
Dude, it's so crazy. Just like Dawson High, go to Digger, back to Dawson High, then that breaks up. You can't get back into Digger. You don't get back into Digger. Then you go to Weston. What did Digger do after that? Is that when they just stayed a 3-piece?
I think they were a 4-piece for a minute. I think because this guy, Mark Cobra Kale, took my spot, who was the roadie at the time and a great guitar player and a super awesome dude. Cobra is the best.
Cobra.
And he just jumped in and took my spot. But then in the meantime, Mike, the drummer, quit. And I can't remember the name of the drummer they got after that. So the next album was a 4-piece with a new drummer and Cobra playing guitar. And then after that, I think it went 3-piece. But I'm not positive because I kind of lost track with those guys. Like, my leaving the band was not cool for a while. I mean, we're all friends now, and like, it's awesome when we see each other and we catch up. But like, for a little bit of time there, it was not. It was a little tense.
Why?
I don't know, just like having like left the band, and like they had like a tour coming up, but it was just I just couldn't stay in the band. It was like not good for me.
Yeah.
And it was like one of those things where you're like, you just have to do this, and people are going to be bummed, but like it should, if like these people are really your friends, it'll work out in the long run. And that's basically how it was. But in the short term, it was weird for sure. I mean, like I waited till they went to Europe to go to the house to get my stuff back.
Oh, man.
But it's fine. It was all good.
Is this during the time of The Promise of an Uncertain Future when they were doing that album? Or was that already out?
This would have been after.
Monte Carlo.
Like, I joined the band before that record was released, and then left in the writing for Monte Carlo.
Okay, so you're not on any of the records then?
No.
But so your name is on Dawson High and then the last 2 Weston albums?
No, I mean, I don't think it's on any Weston records.
You didn't record in any of the Weston albums?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, the albums were the core: Jesse, Jer, Jimmy, and Dave.
And then they just like Jimmy or yeah, Jimmy and or Jim or James. Smile. He's so many names. Well, Jimmy, as I remember, him and Dave just did all the guitar parts, and then when you came in, you just picked up what they had written and played that for the live shows.
Yeah, sort of. For some of the stuff, like, I mean, like, for like, I don't know how familiar you are with like Masked Albert Sounds, the last album, but like, there's a song like called My Favorite High, and like a song like that has like probably 4 guitar parts. So
Yeah.
that was easy to do. But for like the older songs, like Just Like Kurt, there wasn't as much going on. So like we would just kind of like come up with like little things like if Dave is playing this riff, maybe you should double him or maybe just play the chords while this happens. But like the older stuff, we didn't like rewrite it or add new parts. Like
Yeah, you just
we
doubled
would
up the
kind of
guitars.
just double it up or like play like something really simple, like maybe like if you're playing like a D, someone should just play like a D and an A together on like the whatever, the D and G strings, and it'll like fill it out a little bit more and give it like a little bit of like a replacements nuance to it. But like, we didn't mix it up. But the Masked Albert was definitely like a guitar parts heavy album.
Well, two things. One, I remember I remember playing with you guys in Massachusetts New Bedford Fest. Do you remember that? It
Massachusetts.
was
Is that
like
at that big venue?
no, this was at that Alcoholics Anonymous like place that was up there that
Oh wait, was
Rust
this
used
with
to put on.
Ultimate Fakebook?
It was a whole weekend in I think like Gray Area played.
I
Boxer
like that it
might have
was at an
played.
Alcoholics Anonymous center.
Yeah, that's what the shows were. That was connected to. There was a room where bands would play, and then the other room was just kind of like a center for people in AA to go and kind of hang out, so they didn't have to go drink. And he would just have these giant shows there. And I was talking to Nuno about this from Wilhelm Scream, and I think he was like, "Yeah, I would just go play like chess with those guys and shit." But there was a festival that we played, and I could swear that was like I think it was one of the only times I remember you guys playing. And then Hot Rod Circuit they had played, and I remember that too because when they were a different name before they turned into Hot Rod Circuit, and we played a show with those guys a couple times, and they were really like really funny guys, but just very quiet, I guess, when they played. But when they became Hot Rod Circuit, I remember watching them and their guitar player, he was like
Oh,
jumping.
Casey.
Was it Casey? Like skinny guy, he had like all the Sunny Day Real
Yeah,
Estate
that's
tattoos.
Casey.
He was going fucking ballistic, and I'm like, where the shit did this come from? He literally like he would jump and run up the wall and jump off, and I was like, what the fuck? Like, and I remember that was they played that festival, or I guess they would call it that. But I remember you guys playing that because I think we like were bullshitting outside afterwards. But
I think so too. I think Ultimate Fakebook played as well.
yeah,
I'm pretty sure.
yeah, I think you're. I think I did talk about that with them. But I found that flyer, by the way. It is Inspector 7, Heckle, Digger, Humble Beginnings, Conquers a Cow, Boxcar, Saturday, February 14th, Mount Arlington Elks Lodge. And
There you go.
I'm thinking, and Granik put the show on. His fucking numbers on there. This is nuts. I'm thinking that because that was Valentine's Day, I have a feeling I played and then left because I was dating a girl at that time. That makes sense to me why I wouldn't have seen you guys play. But I cannot for the life of me remember that fucking show. I think that was the show
Funny.
where the pigtails end too. Yeah, because this is when we just became. No, this is 18. Yeah, I don't know how the fuck. Anyway, um, yeah, I can't like fully remember this. Um, God damn. So how did like the split with Juliana Theory happen? Because and like did that lead to them getting to know? And God damn it, what's the guy in the band in Dawson High who left to be in Juliana Theory?
Josh
So is that how they met?
Kosker.
Is that how they met Josh because of that split?
Well, we all went to high school together.
Oh,
I went to high school with Brett the singer, and then Josh Kosker, Josh Fiedler, and Neil Hebrank was the drummer at the time. We all went to the same high school. And so when Jeremiah Momper, the other guitar player in Juliana Theory, when he left the band, Josh Fiedler immediately thought of Josh Kosker because they were in Noisome together years before. And so it was like logical reunion for those two to play together again. But like we were all pretty tight back then. I mean, there was a show that Josh Fiedler played in Dawson High because Josh Kosker was sick. And, everyone was super good friends. And, if something happened like at a minute's notice, you could almost interchange any of the musicians because everyone knew each other's songs and blah, blah, blah. It was tight.
So who put that split out?
I don't remember the kid's name, but it's on a label called Arise Records. And I think that came in through Brett Detter from Juliana Theory. And he was like, this label wants us to do a split, blah, blah, blah. We should do it. And, we're like, okay, fine. I think there are 3 or 4 different pressings of it. And there are at least 3 pressings because there's 3 different like covers.
I was wondering that, yeah, because that shows up in Google where there's this one where it's like an airplane in the background and 2 guys in a suit, and then there's the green one. That's the same comp.
Yeah, that's the same one. But I think the second 2, the green yearbook looking one is first. And then there was like a sort of computery graphic designy looking one. And then there's the one with the airplane. And the 2 and 3 have extra song from each band on it.
Oh.
So it went from 8 songs to 10 songs.
Did that sell pretty well? Because you said like when you had the cassette tapes, that was flying off the shelves.
I think it did. I think like I think it was around like 4,000 or something because it was always pressed in a batch of 1,000. So it must have done okay.
Did you guys how you were, like when you guys showed up at a show, like what that was like, and when you guys broke up, were people just, because it sounds like you had a pretty solid following and all of a sudden you were just gone, and then were people just kind of like hitting you up at shows when you're playing with Digger or Weston being like, dude, what the fuck happened?
Yeah, I mean, people asked about that band a lot, for sure. And it was weird because I don't think you know what? I think after Weston was done, I don't recall Dawson High like ever playing again, except we did do like a reunion show in like 2007. We just did one show. And it was really good. It was super fun. It was cool to do because I mean, like, like, because you guys have done some reunions, it's fun to play together now because everybody is like considerably better musician.
Yeah.
And like, it's easier to do where you're just like, oh, it doesn't take as much work to get back to where it was. And it's actually easier to get past it because the things that like were perplexing to you back then from a playing standpoint, 9 times out of 10 aren't anymore.
I never thought about that.
If you
Yeah.
kept up.
Yeah, like if you kept playing, you are just gonna get better either way. I mean, I never really played bass after. The only time I ever played bass is when we do reunion shows, and that's it. Like I never sit home. I play guitar more than bass, which is different. So when I pick up a bass, I'm like, wow, this is just these strings are so much fucking more gigantic than a guitar, from what I remember.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, and also it's like there's no weight, there's no stress about it. I mean, there's really it's like you're not doing it because you're trying to make it work for a career. You're just trying to have a tight set like that night.
It's just like play a good set and get to see a bunch of people that you haven't seen in a long time all in one place.
Yeah.
And like it's like when the fun comes back.
Yeah, it is. It totally is.
It's like there's no pressure. It's just fun. I mean, there's pressure because you don't want to be horrible, but like it's all about fun.
Well, I mean, it's like kind of part of the course for like my band because we played the one show in 2018 and we definitely did have like a day where we had a bit of a tiff. Like with me and Chris kind of got back into old routines for a second and I was like, I'm gonna just breathe. I'm gonna just not have this go in that direction. Then we were like fine, but I was like, Jesus Christ, we just can never just not have this be smooth all the way through. It's like just old habits just like showed up.
Did you guys play in Jersey City with Digger not too long ago?
No, that was we did the show in 2018 and then they wanted Jeremy from Humble wanted to do another reunion show, and I was like, nah, I'm good. I'm good for a while. I don't even know if I want to do another one again. I think if like when if however this whole virus quarantine, whatever the fuck this is, turns out, if shows happen within the next like 3 years, I think I'd be more inclined to play a show just because the energy of having live music again would be insane. Um,
Right.
but at that time, I was like, no, it's like I've said it so many times. Like you throw a great party, and then the next weekend you try to throw the same thing. It just doesn't have. You can't just capture lightning in a bottle, and that show had it. But they did a show. Yeah, it was like them, Avery, Jettison, and Digger, and then yeah, that was in Jersey City, I think, or Asbury. It was like Jersey City and Asbury, I think.
Oh, right. So it was like maybe like a Friday, Saturday thing.
Yeah, I wasn't there though. I was down here in
Gotcha.
Raleigh. So everyone listening, I did jump off for a second and I had to go sign up for CrossFit again. But now I'm back in it. Now we're back into the interview. And we were talking about we're talking about how the band broke up and I had mentioned how people must have been like, what the fuck? And then we were talking briefly about the reunion thing that we didn't do, which has nothing to do with what I want to get into. But I just kind of just catching us both up so we know where we left off. So you, yeah, I mean, so I was like saying like you guys were like kind of sounded like you were doing well. You did the split, and then all of a sudden it's just gone. And you said that people were coming up to you after the fact and asking what happened. And then that was it. You mentioned you had played a reunion show in like 2007, right? Or 2008.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's correct.
where was that?
It was 2007.
Where did you guys play that show?
That was in Greensburg, Pennsylvania, outside of Pittsburgh, at a place called, I want to say it was the Great Escape. I don't believe it's there anymore. Um, and it was over 21. Uh, well, because we were all over 21 anymore, and anyone who cared was over 21. It was fun. And like I think we were talking, I was just saying it was like a no pressure, all fun kind of thing. And it felt like a good cap to what we were doing. And then around that reunion show, we recorded two new songs that are on the part of that iTunes, that like collection thing I tell you about.
So right here in the interview, Jeff's phone started to get a little bit weird, so I suggested calling him back. So I called him back, and then we just picked up where we left off. But the problem was that I didn't hit record, so I missed like 5 or 7 minutes maybe of what he was saying. So what we're going into here is where I asked him about Weston breaking up, the finally breaking up, and how that went.
Like it was cool to be a part of it, and it was fun, and I really got on with everyone in the band. Everyone was like, everyone in Weston was very different, but everyone was super cool, and I always got on with them. As far as like the way it ended, it wasn't something that I had a lot of say in, being like the touring guitar player. I went with what they decided, and that was it. But there was definitely some tension in the band because so much time had passed, and people dedicated a lot of time, and everyone wants something different out of the end result. So people inevitably like are on different pages, and it just kind of came to the point where everyone decided that to get on the right page, maybe we stop doing this. And so that was like kind of a bummer. I think the show where we decided it, we maybe played in Albany, and they had a meeting with John Matheson, who was the manager at the time. And that's a meeting that I'm just like waiting at the club. They come back and we played the show and everyone talked and they're like, yeah, we're probably going to wrap this up in Philly in 2 days. So we played Brownies in New York City the next day. And then the last show was Pontiac Grill in Philly. And that was weird because I remember like I had friends from my side of the state come to that show specifically to take me home. Like I wasn't going to go back to Allentown after that.
Yeah.
I figured I would just go back to Western Pennsylvania and see what was what. So it was like weird to say goodbye on the sidewalk in South Street, Philadelphia. But like it didn't feel like horrible. It just felt sort of inevitable. Like that it was heading towards that.
Could you sense in the live shows that from the crowd it just wasn't gonna keep working?
The crowd was weird because when you played anything from Matinee or before, actually, when you played anything from Got Beat Up or before, it was always insanity, like every Weston show that you saw. Masked Albert was pretty good reaction, or sorry, Matinee was a pretty good reaction, and Masked Albert was a tough sell because it was so different. And I think the one thing that really hurt Weston from an outsider point of view was that Return to Mono didn't really get a wide release. I know it was released in Japan and possibly Australia, but Return to Mono kind of bridged the gap between Matinee and Masked Albert, and it makes it less of a drastic difference, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, because I mean there was that like between Got Beat Up and Matinee, there was obviously a shift, and like some of the songs on Matinee could have been a more polished version of on Got Beat Up, but then other songs kind of
Right.
branched off a bit, and then it went in this like really kind of like I don't remember the last time I heard the last record that actually got released, but I remember it just being like kind of darker. Is that right? And like
Yeah,
moodier? Yeah.
for sure.
And it's weird to go from a band that's so upbeat and poppy and fun to go in this like somber direction where you're like, oh, I'm not. That's not what I was ready for.
Yeah, it's weird when you think about like Got Beat Up, the song, and then Indie Rock Star,
Yeah.
and then to something like I Just Quit Rock and Roll on Masked Albert, which has a pop element to it, but lyrically is kind of dark, I thought.
Yeah.
It's strange though because the band was always the band was very polarizing with people, especially after Chuck, because it was like I like Dave songs or I like Jimmy songs. And it's weird because I liked both of their songs. I really thought Jimmy was a great songwriter, and the same for Dave. I mean, Dave's songs are what drew me to the band because that's the beginning of the band. But Jimmy wrote an amazing song. I mean, after Weston, I played in Jimmy's band as well, Cordova,
Oh,
which I guess would be
yeah.
like the blueprint to beach slang a
Oh my
little bit.
God, that's right. Yeah. Uh-huh.
So I played with Dave solo and also in Cordova with Jimmy. And it was never a stretch for me or like it didn't feel like putting me out. I was happy to play with both of them because I thought that they were both amazing songwriters and they definitely being around them made me a better guitar player and a better like I always considered myself in those bands more like a parts person. Like if you need a riff, I will come up with something and through their guidance like that made me better at that. And that
Mm.
really helped me for like when I started playing music like heavily in living in Brooklyn like with a bunch of different bands.
Yeah.
Like that definitely helped. Being around good songwriters, it definitely lifts you up. And if you pay attention and follow their like plot line, you can learn a lot. And I definitely did.
So the funny thing about Cordova is that when when I had started doing graphic design, I started doing like web design and stuff. And me and Sean from Lanemeyer, we had a thing called House of Merch and
Hmm.
Top 5 Printing, and we printed your guy, like we printed your shirts. Do you remember this? We sold it on we had like an online store where we sold it.
I was like early. I was early on in Cordova, like Stars and Math EP or something, and that was just like a hand screened CDR that my friend Mike recorded, and I only played. I think I played two shows with Cordova.
Oh, okay.
Um, so it was super early on, but it was like the creation of those songs, and it was difficult for me because I was driving from Brooklyn to Allentown for rehearsal
Oh God.
for Saturday and Sunday rehearsal, and it just got to be a lot.
Yeah.
And like I did it for maybe like I don't know, 6 months or 10 months, something like that. We played a show in Montclair, definitely, and I don't remember if there was another one or if there was, where it was, but that was super cool to reconvene with Jimmy again. I was excited about that. It was, definitely one. I think Jimmy writes a really amazing song, and so that was cool. And it was awesome to be living in Brooklyn and getting to back Dave up on his solo stuff, which was equally as awesome. They're
Y-
like just two great songwriters. It's just weird in Weston because they were polarizing to people.
Yeah. I mean, well, they couldn't really live under that umbrella anymore.
Right.
Like you couldn't get away
I
with
mean,
that.
like everyone was like, oh, I like Dave songs, or I don't like Jimmy songs, or Jimmy took over Weston, sort of thing. But I didn't
Yeah,
really ever think
yeah.
internally it was like that.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a conscious thing to like that Jimmy took over. It was just the dynamics of the band and how it flowed.
That was the conversation though. That was like the Jimmy took over. He's writing more songs, but I always liked the mix of all three of their songs because that made for a fun live show because they'd all start
Sure, it
singing
really
their parts.
balanced it out.
Yeah.
And they were all different, but there was a common thread. Like you could follow it easily. You're like, I get it.
Yeah. It was almost like I never thought about this, but it was almost like four different crowds in a high school where like they all kind of came together like it's like four friends that were in different like different categories in high school but like outside of school like they would all get together and hang out. It's like you kind of said like Jeremiah was always like this like jack dude with the what's the proper way to say the shirt he wore? The tank top.
I know the shirt you're talking about. It's white. It's ribbed.
Yep. Sometimes guys wore it in the past and said it differently. Um,
My friend in Australia would call that a singlet.
there we go.
So you
That's
can say that.
That's a safer way to say that. But yeah, like I love when I first saw them play, I was with Face to Face at Tramps, and they just got on stage, and I had never seen anything like that. And not like it was so polarizing, but it was just so fun and hilarious. And every time after that that I saw them, I was like, I love this band because they're just that they are. Chuck would sing his song, and then like Dave would sing his song. Like Dave would sing "Retarded," and Chuck would sing "Superstar," and Jimmy would sing like "New Shirt," and it just worked so awesomely across the board.
Yeah, that was like three vocalists across the front was like super appealing to me when I first got into that band. I thought it was so cool.
Yeah. How long were you actually in the band again?
I guess it's maybe like 12 to 14 months. The three or four tours. There was the
Wow.
Hot Rod Circuit Midtown was a tour. Um, uh, Blue Meanies was a tour.
Whoa, you guys toured the Blue Meanies?
We did. And Sam I Am.
Oh, wow.
Uh, and then there's like your regular like one-off weekend stuff. But yeah, those were the I think that's the three big tours that I'm remembering.
I didn't remember the Blue Meanies were still around then. This is like 2001, right? 2000?
Yeah, I think they had got back together and put out a record and were touring that because I think that it might have been on Mojo. I'm not 100% on that, but like maybe it was Mojo, and that's why we got paired up with them.
Oh yeah, yeah. Cause I
I'm not
actually, yeah,
100% sure.
yeah. The first time I saw them play, only time I ever saw Blue Meanies play was it was Goldfinger, Real Big Fish, Weston, and Blue Meanies opened up, and it was in Sayreville. No, it was a club in South Jersey that closed pretty soon after we saw that show. And I thought that was like it. I never heard of those guys again, but I've actually been trying to like reach out to them to interview them because I really want to hear their story. They were like a scary ska band. Am I remembering that right? Like creepy sounding?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It was like intimidating.
Yep, totally, 100%.
What was it like touring with those guys? Were they like what were they like?
They were pretty cool. I don't recall like hanging out with them too much. They kind of like number one, I think they were a little older than us. We would hang out with them at the clubs and backstage or whatever, but not really. I don't recall like making sure our hotel rooms were at the same place or whatever. Like on the Midtown Hot Rod Circuit tour, that was like lots of hanging out.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the Hot Rod Circuit guys, they are super fun.
They smoked a lot of weed.
A lot.
Or like I remember the bassist would always just smoked a shit ton. He was always
Oh
happy.
yeah,
Yeah.
Jay.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, those guys are awesome. I love Hot Rod Circuit. It was so much fun like touring with those guys. I still like keep in touch with Andy to this day. And the Midtown guys was fun. I mean, like I had known Gabe from when I was in Digger because of Humble Beginnings and Laura Latishef.
Yeah.
So like I knew him, and Midtown was always kind of interesting to me because I mean, I have no idea like why Gabe left Humble Beginnings or if he was asked to leave or whatever, blah blah blah. But I do feel like when he started Midtown that like he definitely had like a bit of a chip on his shoulder and was going to make sure that band succeeded because if I remember in Humble Beginnings, he did like a lot of the legwork. Like he was very organized
Yeah.
as far as like making sure the band played everywhere, but like I don't remember who replaced Gabe in Humble. Was it Rob?
Well, I've talked about this a bunch of times. So Josh was interview episode 4, I think. Yeah, he was episode
Mm-hmm.
4, and we talked about that. And then I talked with Jeremy Hernandez. He was part of that conversation. And then it's funny because then I talked to like Rob Hitt and then Heath from Midtown, but they didn't really know that was more just like from Midtown forward. And again, like I said, I can remember things from 20 years ago, but the interview with Josh was like almost 3 years ago, and same with in Jeremy was 2018. But yeah, they just weren't seeing eye to eye, and it just like was like a hard split. And then it was then Rob. So Heiner, he was in Lanemeyer. He was our
Yep.
second guitar player after we kicked Alan out. And then we got Rob in the band and he was playing guitar and then we were gonna kick Rob out because he just wasn't there yet for playing guitar and he caught wind and he quit. And then we got Patino. So through all our shit, so Rob was kind of like just stagnant and then he went on and joined Humble and played bass. So now every time they play their reunion show, Rob's playing bass. He's always been the bassist for that. Yeah.
Got it.
So he took over
And
after
Chris
Gabe.
Chris was drummer.
Chris was always the drummer. Yeah, him,
Yeah, right.
Chris, Chris and Josh were always in Humble. Rob came in and played bass, and then Jeremy left, and then Conti came in and played at one point, and then the band dispersed, and they became Forever Endeavor after that.
Right.
But
Got
yeah,
it.
Gabe definitely did. You could tell on the songs, and I think I asked Rob and Heath in the Midtown video. It's like Josh's bar mitzvah, and I asked, I was like, was that a slight at Josh, Humble? And they were like, I don't think so. But I think I'd get the real answer from Gabe of like, it sounds like it was always like the rumor like, oh, he was like shitting on Josh, and because there was some bad blood then. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I remember like I know he wasn't stoked that he wasn't in that band anymore. That's for sure.
yeah,
But it wasn't something like we really talked about, but I do feel like on the Midtown Hot Rod Weston tour, like Midtown felt really, really, really motivated.
Yeah.
Like, and you could just tell. That was a fun tour. I think Gabe turned 21 on that tour, and I have like a vague memory of him turning 21 somewhere in Florida.
Oh yeah, was involved in that memory.
Possibly hanging off of a balcony or something in the venue, but maybe.
Maybe it's speculation. We're not sure if that really happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he was straight edge too. I thought for a bit, like he was vegetarian, and then I thought he was straight edge, or he never drank when we hung out. But then I do remember when he turned 21, he started drinking. But that was it. Like I didn't really ever really know him after that. But
Maybe he just wasn't into breaking the law
maybe
and was just waiting.
That's a great point.
No idea. He was just nervous about being arrested for underage drinking, so just stuck it out. But yeah, I mean that was a great tour, and touring with the Samheim guys, that was like an amazing tour as well. And that was one of my favorite tours I've ever been on, and that was like making friends for life with those guys. And that was really cool because that was a band that I looked up to when I was like a kid. So it was cool to get to tour and play shows with them every night, and I don't know, have fun inside jokes and everything. But it was great. And then, I mean, so much so that I lived with Jason Bebout from Samheim for a little bit in Berkeley, just for like 3 months or 3 to 5 months or something. But I stayed with him, and then like all the band, one, two, three different bands I played in Brooklyn were with Sean from Samheim as well.
Oh wow.
So that was cool.
Damn.
But very tight with those guys.
Did you I did an interview with Sergi. That's when I
Oh
started
yeah.
branching out. Yeah, that was crazy. Because he was in the band at that time too. Like he's always been
Yep.
a part of the
He
mix.
was like a OG.
Yeah, I didn't realize how much album artwork that guy had designed.
A lot.
Yeah, like Lagwagon and like bands like huge
He might
bands
have
to
done the
me.
Midtown first album.
Uh, I don't
Did he do that one with the globe or something?
I don't know actually. I never
Not
even
sure, but
asked that
yeah,
question.
he has tons of credits to his name for sure.
Yeah, he did, and I just found out recently that he designed "Oh Calcutta," the Lawrence Arms record.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because Brendan was
That's
talking
cool.
about it in his podcast where he talks about like he breaks down all his albums. It's fucking
Hmm.
really it's really good. But he goes, yeah, we had this like photo or something, and it wasn't getting there, so we gave it to Sergi, and I was like, what the fuck? Yeah, he's had a pretty good career of doing all that stuff.
Yeah, Sergi's great.
So that's cool, man. I mean, it's like it's kind of awesome that you've got. I mean, you've played with so many fucking bands, and you've got to play with the bands that like you had your own band, and then you went off and collaborated with other bands, but you got to play one of your favorite bands. I mean, like, was there ever a point at some point where you were like, man, I wish one of these bands that I've been in, or the think it seems like the most quote unquote successful one as far as touring consistently and having records out and like getting on like talking to bigger labels was Weston. Like, did you ever have after that where you were in bands and wanted to get back up to that, or you were just like, I just want to play, I don't even give a shit?
I think it became like more of a thing as I got older, that like it was more just about like it was just cool to get to play, because in Brooklyn I played in a band like a punk party kind of band called the Fakers, and that was with Sean from Sam I Am and Mikey from Dancehall Crashers and
Oh,
Sean Powell from Fuck Emos. And it was just kind of like goofy punk like that. It wasn't like poppy, but it definitely had like a party vibe to it. And that was super fun, and it was cool to just be like, it was kind of like early in Brooklyn too, where like everything wasn't as set up or professional, and like you could come home from work at like 5 p.m. and Sean would call and be like, hey, we can play in this person's backyard in 2 hours. Can you do it? And you're like, yeah. And you would just show up and play like weird parties or at a bar. Maybe if like your friends were coming through or playing a show on tour at a bar, you would jump on that bill. I mean, we played some good shows. I mean, we played at Bowery Ballroom with TV on the radio. We opened for them, and that was cool
Oh,
because
wow.
Bowie was at the show because he had just sang on their record. So that was fun, and we I think we played some out of town stuff, like maybe there was a place in New Brunswick, uh,
Court
Court
Tavern.
Street,
Court Tavern.
Court Tavern.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we would go play there, or we would go to Buffalo and play at the Mohawk. But mostly it was just like weird art lofts and backyards and shitty bars in Brooklyn, just playing shows. And then from there, that kind of, well, at that time I started another band, like just like that. I wrote the stuff. And that was this kind of like punk rock band called I'm with Cupid. And that was just kind of noisy, like kind of Black Flag crossed with like Sonic Youth.
Oh, wow.
And that was like me. Mike from Digger played drums. My friend Chad from Fireside Blues played guitar. Sean Kennerly from Sam I Am played bass. And then when he left, my wife Carly played bass in that band as well. So that kind of was going on for a while. But then on top of that, Sean started a second band. Yeah, a second band called Flower of Flesh and Blood, which was like a doomy kind of, like, I'd just say it's like doom punk. It's not like stonery as much as it has like more of a edge to it. But we recorded an LP and that was super fun. But like, and then I joined a band called Iran, which was, there was a guy, Aaron Aites. Have you ever seen the Until the Light Takes Us, the black metal documentary?
No.
So this, you should check it out. It's a really interesting documentary on black metal, and Aaron and his partner Audrey did that, and Aaron is from Pittsburgh. I joined that band. That was fun because they had records out. Kip from TV on the Radio was in it as well. That was like a cool band because it satisfied a little bit of travel, because that band, like, people would like fly us somewhere to play a show.
Really?
Like they would be like, "Oh, we want you to play in Seattle," and you'd fly to Seattle on like a Thursday night, play Friday, and fly back Sunday or something.
Jesus.
And that was cool because he wrote great songs, and the critics really liked him, and it occasionally worked out like that we would get to do cool shit like that. But he actually passed away because he had terminal cancer. So
Okay.
basically that ended Iran. And the only other thing I did, like, kind of note, as far as like, I'd fill in for people here and there in whatever band, but for a little while I was playing music with I'm not sure if you're familiar with Sharon Van Etten, but
Mm-hmm.
I played on her Epic record on a track called Love More that they did like sort of this like documentary, like little 15-minute documentary on, and then like a 15-minute like breakdown of how the session went. And that was pretty cool because that was like a song that I played on that ended up like, I think like Bon Iver and The National covered that song.
What?
And so
Jesus.
that was kind of exciting and stuff. And, Brooklyn was more just like, let's just play whatever for fun. But there was some like cool things thrown in, but like, just like an example, like Fakers, we would play like a show on a Thursday, and someone at that show would be like, "Hey, you should play the show here tomorrow night," and we'd be like, "Okay," and then we would, be like, "Let's play tomorrow," and we'd be like, "Well, we can't play the same set list," and someone would be like, "What if we played the same set list but played everything really, really, really slow?" And so we would do that, and
What?
like it was just kind of fun to do.
That's fucking weird.
We'd be like,
That's
"Okay, we'll
hilarious.
do slow Fakers for a night."
And
So it's just like,
what like time period? Like what years was that, Darren?
that's probably from like 2006, 2007 or 8 maybe, to like up through like 2013.
I'm really curious. I know like Brooklyn always gets a an interesting rap or whatever for hipsters and shit like that. But I bet it sounds like that was its own kind of scene, like this weird scene that was going on there that I think it would be interesting if people like told stories about that.
Totally, and it was part of its own scene, and it wasn't like a scene that someone wrote about. Like it wasn't like the Yeah Yeah Yeahs or Interpol or the Strokes or something like that. It was its
Yeah.
own. There was like an underground to the underground, and that's more what it was.
Yeah, like I remember when the Refused came around in 2000, God, I forget when the hell it was, but they had played a secret show in Brooklyn where they just showed up and didn't have all their suits on and stuff, and it was this crammed little club, and it looks like a basement or something. And I remember just like seeing that and thinking that it looks like there's something going on out there where shit like that happens in like a smaller setting, but there's not a huge magnifying glass on that. Like there's not a huge spotlight telling people that, hey, does everyone know this is going on? It's like you kind of just that shit was going on a lot, it seemed. Like
Yeah,
cool shit
yeah,
like
for
that.
sure. There was like always weird little pop-up things like happening like last minute, and like you said, pretty cool. Like Refused. I know where they played over in that storage garage space in like East Williamsburg. I know the show you're talking about.
Wow.
And then like, then St. Vitus, the bar here happened. They started getting shows like that. But like, Against Me would open for Green Day at Barclays Center and then go over to Vitus and play like a secret show at like 2 a.m.
Jesus, that's so wild.
And like, they would just put it on Twitter at like 12:30 and be like first 100 people.
It almost seems like that was the crowd though that was that the scene that I focus on. It seems like a lot of the people from that left that time period and carried that, and then a lot of a good portion of that crowd was the ones that went to Brooklyn and did that thing. I could be completely wrong,
Yeah,
but
I would agree with that for sure.
that's
But I
dope as
mean,
shit,
like,
man.
yeah,
It sucks that like right now you can't.
no,
Sorry, go
go
on.
ahead. It's fine.
I'm just saying that like it sucks right now that how crazy it is up there, especially in New York and in the Northeast during all this shit. How like music is such a giant thing that can't happen right now. That's got to just be that extra salt in the wound during all this crap.
Oh yeah, for sure. I agree with that. But I think you touched on it earlier where you were like, oh, I don't know if I want to do a reunion show, but then like when this is all over, how that might change your mind because like
Yeah.
I mean like the energy people are gonna want to go to a show so bad and like I think it's gonna be so cool when it finally happens.
Yeah. It's gonna be like an old school like emo show where everyone's just gonna be crying.
Yeah, at what is that like at the Wayne Firehouse or something?
Oh man. See, like I think I've said this a couple times, but if there was a show at a place like the Wayne Firehouse where it was a Legion Hall show, I would want to play something like that before playing like another club show. Like recreate that whole thing, show up at a Legion Hall that's big enough to have a couple hundred people there, and just have someone who's have it like someone who's good with like sound and just show up with two speakers, mic it, but everyone's on the floor.
Oh yeah.
That's what I'd want. Yeah, that'd be incredible.
Yeah, I totally
That'd be so fucking
totally
awesome.
miss that sort of thing. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it's a time and a place, and it's either difficult or impossible to recreate, but like going to all those like Legion Halls or Elks Lodge and all that stuff was just like, it was so interesting. You called up some dude and you're like, can I rent that room? And they're like, yeah, it's going to be $125. Nothing can get broken. But like you turned it into like a venue, and then like you had awesome bands play that played it
Yeah.
like they were at Madison Square Garden, and it was like an unforgettable time. I mean, I did a show that was Dawson High, Juliana Theory, Knapsack, and At the Drive-In in a one room schoolhouse in Greensburg, Pennsylvania. And we had like 9 days to do the show because at the drive-in had a show fall through in Cleveland, so we filled in that space with that, and it was just weird. Like, the band wrote their name on the chalkboard and like played amazing sets, and it's like that's like one of those shows like where I'm from where people like still talk about that, and you can like watch video of it
Wait,
online.
yeah, wait a minute. You put that show on, that's them, that's the video online of Knapsack playing Cold Enough to
Yeah.
Break, and Courage was confused, and then at the drive-in, Cedric has short hair and a red shirt.
Yep.
You put that
Yeah, and he
show
puts
on.
his head inside a piano.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep, that's at Armburst Elementary Schoolhouse.
You gotta be fucking kidding me. The moment you said that, I was like, wait a minute, that sounds like that show. That's crazy. I
Yeah, that
never.
was one of those shows that like everyone my age that was there still talks about that show.
That's like, I mean, for me, that's very infamous. Just because we were on our last tour, and we ended up going to the Whipple House out in Chicago, where Tim from Rise Against, he used to live with
Mm-hmm.
Neil from Lawrence Arms, and there was just like a ton of people there, and that's where all these bands would practice in their basement and stuff. And so we showed up there when we were like practicing, and right before then, I bought this video, and it was like at the drive-in live at some schoolhouse, and we played it at the Whipple House. I was like, oh, you gotta check this. I was like, do you guys have a VCR? They're like, yeah. I was like, holy shit, I just found this. I gotta see what this is. And that's so, to me, that's like fucking amazing. I can't believe I never knew that you put that on from meeting you.
Yeah, that was such like a weird
Jesus.
thing because Blaze James was booking at the drive-in at the time, and I was in my parents' basement playing pool with Brett from Juliana Theory, and Blaze James called and was like, "Could you do a show next week on this date? It's at the drive-in in Knapsack." Like, I know it's like late notice, and like I hung up, and I told Brett, I was like, "Hey, does Juliana Theory want to play with Dawson High and at the drive-in in Knapsack next week?" And he was like, "Done." I think like we made flyers that night, called the schoolhouse and reserved it, and that was it.
Wow. Holy shit. Was that when This Conversation's Ending was out from Knapsack?
Yeah. Yep.
Damn, dude. Oh, that's right, because Cold Enough to Break is what they played. See, in that video, it looks like they open with Cold Enough to Break, but I think Blair said that because I talked to him about this in his interview, and I think he mentioned that they didn't open with that. I don't
I
remember.
don't remember. I had to ask my friend Randy because I think he has their set list.
Oh my God.
So,
I love how all these pieces are just like all coming together. It's so crazy.
and
Like,
Randy
yeah,
is the house of the party you were at.
in Pittsburgh.
Yep.
This is so obscure, but I remember like Christmas lights or something, or we were like smoking in the back porch or something like that, or his kitchen. I don't know.
In
That's
his kitchen, yeah, and there was Christmas lights around the top of it.
yes, I remember that.
Yep, and lots of pictures of Lee Harvey Oswald.
That I kind of remember, I think.
Yeah,
What
very
a
weird.
what a random conversation this is. I love it.
It's so funny to like think about all this stuff.
It's so cool. I mean, this helps me break from my day where it's Monday and I'm like, ugh, I don't want to do anything. It's like, thank God I had this interview coming up.
No, I hear that one totally, for
Yeah,
sure.
man. All right, dude. Well, I'm gonna wrap this up and the same way I do all the time. So I'm gonna ask two questions. One, before I ask the last question, what would you like to plug?
Mm, I don't really have anything specific I want to plug, but if I was to plug anything, I would say if you're buying any music, you should be buying it when Bandcamp waives their fees for any artist on the first Friday of the month. I think it's important to help out the artists as much as possible right now, and if you can put the money directly in their pocket, then by all means do it.
It's funny you said that because I just got that email um, before I jumped on the call with you again. They said that, yeah, we're tomorrow. We're waiving. I didn't know it was every first Friday.
Oh wow, yeah, I think it's every first Friday, but sometimes they announce more days. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure it's the first Friday of the month.
That's really good to know. I did not know that that's what they were doing because I know I'd see, yeah, like I just got this email. They're doing it November 2nd, 6th, which this interview is gonna come out past that. So that's next Friday they're doing it. But again, we're gonna be talking in the past when this comes out. So that'll already have
Right.
happened. But keep an eye
I
out
usually
for
scroll
that.
through and favorite everything I want to purchase and then just save it till that day
Ah, that's a good
and then
move.
go through and buy it all.
I'm gonna post about that in that Jersey pop punk group because I'm not sure if 100 people, like a lot of people know about that.
Yeah, I
So
think it's very helpful to the bands for sure, and they can take anything they can get now with no touring.
yeah, cool, man. All right, well, on that note, last question. What scene ethics do you hold on to this day?
Mm, I think the one thing I think most about uh, that there was lots of different styles of music and lots of different people that make up the scene, and how important it is to always stay open-minded and know that it takes a team of a bunch of different people to make something like that go off and be a part of. And people need to celebrate differences like we did when we started these things and continue to do so. And I just try to keep an open mind with that for everything, basically, uh, you know, at work or in life stuff. You just gotta accept that it takes all sorts of people to make things go, and they might not be the same as you, but you can all work towards the same goal.